Hello and welcome to the Renault Vel Satis. So what is the Renault Vel Satis? Well, you may have seen articles around Britain's rarest cars or the cars that made the biggest loss for their manufacturers, and yes, they only made 60 odd thousand between 2002 and 2009. 3,500 were sold in the UK up until 2005 when it left the UK. It's about a couple of hundred left, so not a lot of cars for a mass-produced car over 8 years. That meant Renault lost £16,000 per car sold. This was a £1 billion programme. They threw everything at it. It was their flagship. And yeah, it made a big loss. But there's so much to be celebrated about this car. I don't think people should dwell on those two facts, if you like. So hopefully I'll draw your attention to all those good bits. So maybe the name will tell us more. Vel Satis is a combination of the words velocity and satisfaction. Okay, that doesn't tell us much either, so I'll give it a go. So the Vel Satis was Renault's E-segment offering, so think E-Class, A6, close to home the Peugeot 607, and it replaced the Renault Safran. It's a 4.86 metre hatchback, front-wheel drive, based on the second generation Renault Laguna. Came out in 2002, like I've said. It was facelifted around 2005, but we never got that in the UK, so it had different grills, different rear bumper, exposed exhausts, new dials, new controls to the sat nav and things like that, and a 2-litre diesel engine, which replaced the 2.2-litre diesel engine we got in the UK. The 2-litre petrol turbo, which is in my car, which is the entry-level engine. And then there was also two V6s, the Isuzu Source 3-litre V6 diesel and the 3.5-litre V6 from the Nissan 350Z, which is quite an engine. Not quite the same power as the 350Z, it's got like 250 horsepower. Both the V6s were paired to autos. The 4 cylinders could come in a manual or auto. Mine is a 6-speed manual. So that's the engines and the gearboxes. In terms of trim levels, there's 3 trim levels: Expression, Privilege and Initiale. The top 2 were available as the V6s, the bottom 2 available as the 4 cylinders. Mine is a mid-range Privilege, but it has also got some options on which I'll go through later. So there's lots to talk about with this car, but let's start with the styling, because there is a lot to talk about. So around the front, it's pretty sharp. There's lots of creases. You've got these big vertical headlights, this slatted grille, and then you've got this sort of bumper insert which has an inverted pyramid, which is a bit of a theme around the car, and I'll draw it out as we go around. So it's very sharp and yeah, very distinctive as well. This is a big car, as I mentioned. It's long, it's tall, but I think it looks quite majestic. None of the features are oversized, it's not trying to be intimidating, it's very gently styled, there's no garnish on it. I think it's really nicely styled. So the side view of the Vel Satis is pretty distinctive as well. It's got a very distinctive silhouette because this is a long hatchback, which is pretty unusual. It's got a very long wheelbase as well. It's also got quite a few crossover-y styling cues about it as well. It's got unpainted sills. It's got high sidewalls on the tyres. It's got quite a bit of ground clearance, so it's very on trend at the moment. My car's on 17-inch alloys. The top spec car's got 18s, which do make it look like it's riding less high. But yeah, certainly distinctive. The styling is pretty simple on the side, to be honest. You've got this nice sharp crease coming down the side, the engine badge on the side, and the wing mirrors that sprout out the doors, although they are pretty small. But it's actually around the back where it gets a bit more interesting. Okay, so the styling around the back is quite similar to Renault's of this era, the Shape That Ass Megane, where it juts out at the back and it's quite sharply styled. But on the Vel Satis you get a big wraparound rear window, a lot like a Mazda RX-8, these big tail lights that go into the boot lid, and the same bumper treatment as on the front with the inverted pyramid, which is also on the fuel flap. It's also capless, so you don't have to remove the cap to refill it, a lot like a Ford. I'm not sure if Renault were paying Ford for the patent at the time, but it's quite a unique, it's not like that on my other Renaults. You also get a big Renault logo in the middle of the car, which is actually the boot release, which I quite like. So while we're in the boot, the capacity is a similar size to an Audi A4 Avant from the class below, so it's big but it's not massive. It's nowhere near the size of an E-Class estate, for example, but it's pretty practical. The seats fold 60/40, nothing too special, and there's the odd hook and strap in here. It's not, you know, crazy practical. Full size spare underneath, but it's big and it's all right, and it's a hatchback, which makes it a lot more practical than a sedan. I've got the blind pack on my car, which is nice, and that actually goes up with the parcel shelf, which is nice. Another feature of the boot is that it's got soft close on. There you go, you can hear, so it closes it, which you softly close it. Annoyingly, if you close the boot quite hard, because you're not expecting the feature to be there, it doesn't groan at you, and then the boot doesn't actually latch. So that's caught me out a few times. So you've got to wait for the groan, essentially, to know that it's closed. But yeah, overall, very distinctive car. I really like the way it looks. I think it's aged really well, and I think it's really on trend, this sort of crossover-y hatchback car. It's a lot like the Kia EV6, to be honest, which has just come out. So welcome to the interior of the Vel Satis. It is a very nice place to be, but initially it seems quite normal. Got some dials in front of you, got some vents, everything's in the middle where you expect it to be. There's a gear knob, but what you might notice is actually the centre console doesn't have a handbrake. It's quite high up, it's quite wide, and although modern day you'd expect an electronic handbrake, this was actually the second car in the world to get an electronic handbrake. It's located down here. It's actually pretty well thought out. It's quite intuitive. It releases when you set off. It engages when you turn the engine off. Great. Yeah, very, very clever. Also, this is the key, and it goes down here in true Renault style, and yeah, stays out of the way, which is quite nice, although it is very light. I keep forgetting I have it in my pocket. It's also been through the wash, and you can't really put any key rings on it, but it is nice. I do like it, but I'm very worried about putting it in the wallet in case it gets bent. But either way, back to the interior. So like I said, initially it seems quite conventional, but the closer you look, the more detail you notice, and features and hidden things it has. It's just great. So let's start with the seats. If Belinda Carlisle knew about these seats, this is what she would have been singing about. They don't try and force you to sit in any sort of way. They just sit underneath you and just let you sink into them. They are so comfy, and I have leather in my car, which is lovely. Also, really uniquely, the seats actually bend in the middle. So here they bend, and you can see on the electric switch that there's two halves, so you can adjust sort of the bottom and the top separately, which is great for me because I sort of sit in my lower back in gangster mode. Normally I wouldn't have any shoulder support because the seat would be over in the back, but actually I've got shoulder support. It's great, and look how thick these seats are. They're just so comfy, and they've got integrated seat belts, so they're not in, you know, dragging across your neck or anything. Brilliant, honestly brilliant. There's lots of storage in the front, so you've got trays under the seats, you've got fold out door pocket things and a front one as well. You've got this cubby here, which is normally where you would have the sat-nav controls if your car had sat-nav, but it doesn't. You've got a decent glove box, which is actually where the trim level badge is, so it says privilege here. Really odd, it's not written anywhere else on the car, it's not on the outside, it's not anywhere else, it's just hidden in the glove box. Very strange. Massive armrest, which also pops open. You can put a very old phone on it. Little ashtray here, and this pops out and reveals the cup holders and a storage tray. That is fantastic. Just love that. So in terms of the design, it's quite a wide open dashboard, dials in the front, and then leads into the central display here, and there's an inverted pyramids which are sort of reflected on the outside. Lovely analog clock which has Vel Satis written on it. It's just a very nice, comfortable place to be. I could sit here for hours, and I have sat down in this car for hours. few little things that annoy me. You can't see anything on the CD player without having a magnifying scope. The buttons are tiny, even when they're illuminated you can't see them, and they're not even in a logical place. The up and down volume is either side of the on button. That is just not very well thought out. The climate control doesn't come on unless you press a certain button, which is really annoying, and you can't turn the temperature down on both sides, so when I'm in the car on my own it won't automatically change the passenger side over as well. Another really nice touch about this car is that the open close vent controls are illuminated. I love that feature. I think the Volkswagen Bora has the same. I just think it's really premium, and I love this wood trim as well. Probably quite dated by today's standards, but yeah, I love it. And this dash design actually probably suits this whole digital dial, digital center quite well, this single panel. And yeah, everything's really nice. It's so comfortably padded. See, everything's soft and squishy like it should be. It should let you be comfortable. So many cars just don't want you to be comfortable. This car does. Other little touch which I don't really understand, it's got a dimmer for the interior lights, which, you know, you can go from, you know, just about seeing enough to not seeing anything at all. And it has got like a BMW style LED that illuminates somewhere around here. It's, I suppose, a nice little touch. So the rear doors open outwards and upwards, just like the swan doors on an Aston Martin. Those doors are designed to miss curbs because they are very low cars. I'm not sure why these doors open upwards and outwards, but it's something I've noticed. They also open almost 90 degrees. And those things matter to me now because I am a family man, and that makes it easy to put child seats in. This car is very family orientated, really. It's a great car for having a family. It's one of the reasons why I bought it. I was looking for an excuse to get one, and the arrival of my son was the perfect opportunity. This car has Isofix, which is the little hooks to put your car seats on, 12 years before it became a legal requirement. So it is pretty unusual for a 2002 car. This car also had a 5-star Euro NCAP rating, which was very unusual for 2002. The Laguna was the first car to get it, and this was one of the first cars after to get a 5-star Euro NCAP rating. Obviously it doesn't mean much now because that was only taken into passenger safety, didn't take into account things like pedestrian or active safety like the scores do now, and safety's moved on, but for its age it's incredibly safe. It's got all the airbags, it's got pretensioners in the seat belts and all that really. Big focus on safety. It's also got the blinds, as I've mentioned, which is really useful. That was an option on my privileged model. It's also got the little pyramid pattern on the handle here, and it's just a very practical car. There's lots of little storage areas, and yeah, perfect for a family. Is there a better way to travel as a family in luxury and style? I don't know. So here we are in the back of the Vel Satis, and what a lovely place it is. There's loads of room back here, loads of headroom if your headlining's not drooping like mine is, something I need to sort out. Loads of knee room and foot room, loads of room to spread out basically. Nice little armrest here to rest your arm, or a proper armrest, one where you actually want to rest your arm in the centre. There's no cup holders like you get on even quite expensive cars where your elbow sinks in. Why are the cup holders there? They don't need to be there. They should be here, where your hand goes, and then they disappear when you don't need them. Nice little storage tray here, which is all flocked, which is beautiful, and there's a headrest here that pops out when you're not using it, so it's out the way of seeing out the back, and how many people actually use the middle seat anyway. Oh, seats are lovely. You sit higher than you do in the front, so you get really good view out. There's also these low sort of cut seats, so you can see the front really nice. You've got blinds back here, which have the little inverted pyramid theme on the handle, which is nice, and it's just a nice place to be. Quite a bit of storage. You've got door pockets here, you've got a little pocket here which is also flocked, you've got these little pop out trays that will attach to the back of your legs, but they're quite cool. And You've got a fan in the centre, which doesn't change the temperature. It's not tri-zone climate control, but it does allow you to get some more air to the back of you and control where it goes, your feet or arms, face rather. There's little lights as well underneath the front seats to illuminate the footwells like they do in the front, which is very nice. And it's just a lovely place to be. I'm very jealous of my son who gets to spend a lot of time back here. It's just lovely. It just feels luxurious. And the Vel Satis was the presidential car. He did have a longer wheelbase, so he had more space in the back for some reason. I don't know how big his legs were, but it is a luxury car. So yeah, very nice place to be, whether you're in the front or the back. So while I'm changing the brake discs and the anti-roll bar bushes, it's a great opportunity to show you the suspension, because it's actually pretty trick. Renault spent a lot of money on it. It's a patented trigonal setup, and it's pretty complex. I don't think I quite understand it, but I think it works a bit like a multi-link setup and a double wishbone setup, sort of like a combo of the two. It's got 3 key components. You've got this spring here, which is on this like upper arm here, what looks like a bit of like a swivel axis, and then you've got this lower arm here which goes towards the middle of the car, and I think that behaves a bit like a wishbone setup, which allows the wheels to stay perpendicular to the ground. You've then got this big arm here, which again acts a bit like part of the lower wishbone. It's also like a semi-trailing arm, and I think this setup just makes sure that the wheel doesn't move around a bit, and during things like bump, the wheel stays in contact with the ground a lot better. So Renault clearly thought it was worth doing for the ride and handling balance. It does handle pretty well, it rides all right, so maybe it works. It's hard to know what it would be like without it, but yeah, again, contributing to the amount of money that Renault put into the Vel Satis, and you know, the amount of effort they put into their flagship vehicle. Okay, so I'm out on the road in the Vel Satis, and I'm going to start on a motorway dual carriageway, because a big E-segment car like this, I spent a lot of its time going up and down the country doing business. Most of them would have been bought as company cars. So I'm accelerating now up to 70 miles an hour. The engine's quite noisy. It's not unrefined. It just makes a lot of noise, but I suppose it's, you know, trying quite hard. Despite its engine code F4RT, this engine isn't as fast as a fart. Despite all the noise and racket it just made, it does actually accelerate pretty well. I'm quite surprised. So this is the 2-litre turbo. It's got 165 horsepower, 250 newton meters of torque, available from 2000 RPM. So really low down. So it's really good for in-gear acceleration. The turbocharge is really well blended. There's no peakiness or lag or anything. It just feels really responsive, and it's just a good engine, despite this being probably the biggest car apart from the S-Class that they put it in. I can only imagine that the V6 diesel and the V6 petrol in particular feel really pokey. So I'm doing 70 miles an hour on the cruise control. It's very quiet in here. Wind noise, tyre noise really well suppressed. The road surface is a bit rough, so the tyre noise is a bit higher than usual, and you can't hear the engine at all on cruise, so that's really impressive, really refined. And with these seats, oh, beautiful seats. I could sit here for ages. It really is a properly refined luxury car. I mentioned the cruise control. On the Initiale models, you could actually get adaptive cruise control. Back in 2002, they regulated the distance to the car in front. It didn't use the brakes, it wasn't that advanced, it was quite an early system. It just let off the throttle to regulate the gap, but still very impressive for the year. So I'm going to go in search of something a bit more twisty to talk about the ride and handling. But before I do, I'm coming up to a roundabout. It's a good time to talk about the controls. So everything's really light in here, really easy to use, low effort. Gear shift, although it's a bit long, it's actually pretty nice. And the pedals are low effort, the clutch is light, the brakes are, you know, brake pedals light, responsive. It's just really good. The steering is too light. It's so over assisted, which makes it really easy to move and maneuver. But yeah, it's definitely too light. You have no connection to what the car is doing. So it's a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. Okay, so I found a country B road now, which is a bit more like it. So this is a big E segment car. It's front wheel drive, it's French. I expected it to focus more around comfort, to have a really good ride quality, especially with that trick rear suspension that's apparently patented and, you know, is all the bells and whistles. But the ride isn't as good as I think it should be. It's not too bad when you're on a relatively smooth surface, it doesn't fidget too much, but it does crash quite a bit over speed bumps. Yes, the car is quite old, but still, I don't think it's very good at all. And you know, Audis and Beamers, they're more sporty focused. Their rides are rock hard. I don't like their ride quality in particular on 5 Series and whatnot. But I do think it should be better on this. Surprisingly, the handling is actually much better than I expected it to be. Much better than I expected it to be. It seems like they've got that balance a bit wrong for me, really. But it does make it pretty enjoyable to drive for what is quite a big front-wheel drive car. The steering, like I said, completely devoid. It's too light. You don't get any sense of what's happening. But the whole chassis responds really eagerly. There's barely any roll. It just hangs on really hard. It's really easy to sort of place. Yeah, I'm coming up to an S-bend now at, you know, a fair rate. And yeah, it's actually pretty good. I'm very surprised, to be honest. I do actually really enjoy driving it, which, you know, makes long journeys on country roads more enjoyable. But yeah, definitely a strange side of the ride handling balance to be on. I think they should have definitely focused more on trying to make this Citroen-esque in its ride quality. So it's a big French car. It's got a few toys on it. You probably would have expected a few reliability issues. I've had the car about 6 months. It's been pretty good to me, to be fair, but it has had a few electrical gremlins. So when I got the car, it was telling me through the voice diagnostic system, which I'll demonstrate now because the fuel light is on.
Warning, fuel level low.
That the brake light was out, but it wasn't out when I checked. The strange thing is that when I was indicating, it was indicating through the brake light. The ground was faulty, so I put a new ground wire in and solved that issue. But yeah, I was having a bit of a disco at the back, and it was cancelling the cruise control when it indicated right, and it was all a bit annoying. Also, I fixed the backlight on the cruise control panel because that was broken. So, you know, cheap fixes, but, you know, little annoyances. The electrical issue I haven't got to the bottom of yet is when you open the driver's door, the left wing mirror drops right down to the bottom of its viewing angle. It's very frustrating. I haven't sorted it out yet. It must be something to do with the connector in the driver's door sending power to it, but yeah, it's a bit strange and I do need to sort it out. But, you know, apart from that, it's been pretty good to me. You know, parts can be quite hard to source. You know, the engine and gearbox and most of the mechanicals are shared with other Renaults, but, you know, exterior bits and interior bits are all unique, so it can be quite tricky to get those bits. But overall, lovely, comfortable car for long distance driving on the motorways with a surprising handling edge to it. But the ride quality could definitely be better. But yeah, love it. And you know, things like comfort, it's not just about how nice it is to sit in. It's very easy to see out. The windows are very low, dash is very low, windows are quite tall, and you've got the wraparound rear window around the back, so it's actually very easy to see round. It's quite relaxing, despite having big pillars. That wraparound window really does help, you know, over your shoulder, so it just makes it feel more calming to drive, really. So that's all good stuff. So there you go, the Renault Vel Satis. I think this thing is fantastic. I think it's a true gem in the history of Renault, and I think it's really undervalued. There aren't many of these left in the UK now, and there's a very small but loyal following to try and keep them on the road, and I think they should be celebrated. This thing was truly innovative. I don't think people could see past the fact that it was a big Renault with front wheel drive and a big price tag, and it looked a bit weird. But really, this is bang on trend now, this luxury big hatchback type thing with, you know, crossover styling keys but no SUV performance at all. And, you know, it's aged really well. It's a brilliant car. You know, Renault spent a lot of money on it, and it shows the refinement's excellent. There's some really clever features like the electronic park brake, which was revolutionary for 2002, the unique seats, which are heavenly to sit on, and it's just a fantastic car, really well thought out, really practical. They thought about what people wanted to use an E-segment car for, rather than just follow the herd like BMW and Audi. And yes, it hasn't got a nice rear-wheel drive chassis, but it handles surprisingly well. So I think this is a car to be celebrated. It's a car that I will always keep. It's part of my collection now. But I'd love to know what you think, and if I convince you of the Vel Satis and its merits. So thank you for watching, and please comment and let me know what you think.